Hello YouTube. Bane666 here. As most of you probably know, I started this series of videos to expose the lie that Elliot Rodger was connected to the men's rights movement. But I am now expanding it to cover any falsehoods, misconceptions, misinformation, or outright lies spread about the MRM. So let's get stuck into it. Okay, let's start off with this article. Although it's mainly about women against feminism, it does have some very interesting things to say about the men's rights movement. Things that aren't going to make you happy, by the way. Anyway, the article is by Nina Berla, and was published in the New York Observer. It's titled, "Women Against Women, First Wave, Second Wave, Third Wave, and Now 3 Steps Back." Besides the warm, pumpkin-kindle citadels of the Hobby Lobby, there's another new club for self-effacing female enablers of angry white men. Women Against Feminism had, last time I checked, 16,013 followers on Facebook. Its Tumblr is constructed of selfies of young women, dressed and posed like ads for DIY escort services, holding up bits of notebook paper on which they've scrawled screeds against feminism. Well, we are only into the first paragraph, and we already have this feminist slut-shaming anti-feminist females, by claiming they look like prostitutes. It would seem that feminists think slut-shaming is always wrong, except when they want to use it against non-feminists, then it seems it's perfectly acceptable. And I think it's important to note, this isn't some 16-year-old Tumblr feminist, whose first taste of poison Kool-Aid has gone to her head, but a grown woman who is working as a journalist. This is her job. She is a professional mouthpiece for the modern-day feminist movement. And she is actively slut-shaming. Not to mention the angry white males comment. So typical, isn't it? Next. Here are just a few quotes from a compendium of such blinding idiocy and prejudice that it defies description. Black nail-polished hands hold a notebook over a half-shirt exposing a belly button. "I don't need feminism because I don't think it's necessary to belittle and dispose of an entire gender in the name of equality." What exactly does the color of her nail polish, or her clothing, have to do with her statement? Next. A note is propped against the protuberant cleavage enhanced by a push-up bra under a tank top. "If I'm wearing a top like this, I want you to look." A woman with 2 or 3 lip piercings. "I don't need feminism because blaming men for your own insecurities and mistakes is wrong and absurd." Once again, what does their fashion choices have to do with their arguments? Next. These women are slandering the movement that enabled their freedom. They live in a world in which they and their mothers can vote, decide whether or not to work, who and when to marry, and whether and when to have children. That was not the case for women within living memory. They have feminists to thank for that, not Rush Limbaugh's ideological forebears. Actually, they have modern society to thank for the things listed here. Modern technology, and modern standards of living, have freed Western women from many biological restrictions, which previously held them in restrictive gender roles. For example, the pill has given them control over reproduction. And modern medicine, sanitation, clean water, and an abundance of food, has allowed more children to reach adulthood, meaning we can now have less children per family. Or, as many of us are now choosing, having no children at all, without the human race dying out. Now, I don't doubt that aspects of feminism have played a role in giving modern women the freedoms listed by the author, but I personally think these freedoms would have been inevitable, a natural consequence, of modern society. It's interesting, though, that she mentions the right to choose to work or not. Presumably she is talking about stay-at-home mothers, or housewives. This, of course, is not a choice men have in the majority of cases. It's also interesting that she would bring up Rush Limbaugh, as if the only 2 choices on offer are far-left extremism, or far-right extremism. No middle ground available in her narrowly defined worldview. But then again, I guess if you are as far to the left as this author, everyone else must look like right-wingers. And for the record, I'm a centralist. Next. But they do have Mr. Limbaugh and his ilk to thank for the cockamamie ideas they've scrawled on notebook paper, to wit. I need feminism because if they called it man-hate, men wouldn't help us. I'm tired to be represented by some hysterical hipster whore. My problem with feminism is that it's not just about building women up, but also cutting men down. I don't need feminism because only the weak-minded buy into cults. Man-hate. Feminist cult. Hysterical hipster whore. All catchy right-wing radio memes, presented here in pretty cursive, with hearts dotting the I's. Actually, these are all valid points, that have nothing to do with left, right, politics, and everything to do with how feminists publicly behave. Ironically, her very article is an example of this very behavior. Next. When I first went online looking for women against feminism, I mistakenly Googled, anti-feminist site, and stumbled across a men's rights site with the same theme, and eerily, some of the identical claims. The anti-feminist men's site actually links to the Women Against Feminism site, while also including articles on how sex-hating feminists raised the age of consent for girls to 16 in the Victorian era, thereby limiting male sexual options to this day. The site includes a petition to stop the UK's porn filter and a helpful YouTube class on how to date Russian girls. Of course, there are no links or citations to any of these claims, not even so much as a name of one of the websites. But she does give us the name of a YouTube video. And I happened to find a YouTube video by this very name.
A riddle wrapped in an enigma surrounded by a mystery. That's how Churchill described Mother Russia, and it's certainly true for the former Soviet Union countries as well. It's another day, it's another FSU country for Mr. Torero, and now I've successfully seduced more than 30 girls using day game, not internet dating, from these parts. So I thought I'd walk around and explain what works, what doesn't work, some of the myths, and give you some little tips if you plan to do the same. Alright. Guys say to me, why do you come to the former Soviet Union so much and you visit Russia so much? Is it because it's easy? Is it because you don't need any skill? Is it because it's pussy paradise? No, no, and no. I come here for one reason and one reason only. It's not to live in a village and look at crumbling buildings and horses and cobbled streets. It's because the women, for me, are the hottest in the world. Okay, they're the most feminine. Male-female polarity exists here. They're groomed, they go to the gym, or the fitness center, as they like to call it, 3 or 4 times a week. They have manicures, they have pedicures, they wear short skirts, they have high heels.
That's enough of that. I think you all get the idea. Clearly this guy is not talking about men's rights, and going by this video, and his website, he is in fact a pickup artist. So here we have yet another example of Bean's Law. So I have no reason to believe she has been to any men's rights sites as she claims. There are no links, no citations, no names, apart from one, which would seem to be yet another pickup artist. Is this the best they can do? Try to associate us with the pickup artists to try to discredit us? Oh, but it gets much worse from here. I suggest if you have anything nearby, which you might throw at your screen, that you pause this video, and move it. You have been warned. Everything about Women Against Feminism suggests it's a sock puppet for the aggrieved misogynists and pedophiles of the anti-feminist men's rights crowd. The main clue is that almost all the women on the site are nude and posed in ways that fulfill dirty old men's wildest dreams about pliant young things. I did warn you. You know, I can understand many feminists disagreeing with us. That doesn't mean I think we are wrong, just that I can understand, from their point of view, that our position might be hard to understand. After all, they have been fed only half the story their entire lives. And because of that, I can even understand why they would call us misogynists. Not that I think the majority of us are, but from their sheltered, one-sided point of view, we must seem that way. The Elliot Rodger bullshit though, was crossing the line, and I honestly wondered if they could ever top such a low fucking act, as to falsely associate us with a mass shooter. And it seems I have now got my answer. As now, it would seem, fighting for the rights of men, is no different than pedophilia, well at least in the eyes of one cunt. So to sum up so far. If you are a female who doesn't believe in feminism, then you are a slut, who is so stupid, that you are manipulated, by the evil men's, into turning against her own kind. But if you are a male who doesn't believe in feminism, then you are clearly white, right-wing, and a dirty old pedophile, who can control and manipulate stupid young sluts, with possible misogynistic telepathic powers. Isn't it amazing how the so-called feminist journalist just reduces those females who disagree with her to their sexual appeal, and then robs them of all agency? Why, it almost sounds like objectification. While at the same time reducing males who disagree with her to sexual deviance. What a fucking scumbag. And she seriously wonders why people think of feminism as a cult, and want nothing to do with it. Next. Plenty of older women are against feminism, too, but these particular women against feminism are barely of legal voting age. Someone, somewhere has told these young women that feminists are against sex, against men, and stand for limiting people's options. And I think we know who. Yes, we do know who has told these young women that feminists are against sex, against men, and stand for limiting people's options. The answer is simple. The answer is feminists. You know, it's strange that she would criticize the age of these women, because they seem to be the same age as the feminists who hold up similar pro-feminist signs. So when young feminists do it, they are strong, independent, women who are expressing their opinions, which are valid and should be listened to. But when anti-feminists of around the same age do the same thing, they are ignorant sluts, who have been manipulated by white, right-wing, pedophilic, men's rights activists. Next. One of the longest recent comments on the Women Against Feminism Facebook site argues that feminists shouldn't tell us what feminism means. None of you can claim to own the true definition of feminism, the poster, Christian Cueva, wrote to imaginary feminist adversaries. Everyone here has had negative experiences with feminists and decided to join this page to speak out against it. No one here became anti-feminist without a reason. I'm not interested in what you think feminism really is. Until you actually come to a consensus on the meaning of the word feminism, you don't own it. Turns out Women Against Feminism welcomes feminist-hating men. Mr. Cueva is a man. Oh no. Not a man. How dare he have a penis, and express an opinion on feminism? Quickly, let's burn him at the stake for heresy, as he has spoken blasphemy against the one true religion. But seriously, Mr. Cueva makes an excellent point, which the author of this article fails to address. How strange. It's almost as if she is more concerned about his gender than his opinion. Next. If we take Women Against Feminism at their word, that they really are a genuine grassroots groundswell of female opposition to the fight for women's equality, and not just pretty proxies for pervy right-wing radio-addicted men blustering about women who don't shave their legs and that whore, Sandra Fluke, then we must give intellectual legitimacy to some of their claims. Oh, you mean after calling them brain-dead sluts for most of the articles so far? And by the way, being anti-feminist does not mean being anti-women's rights. But nice try. Next. It's not easy, but that's exactly what self-titled, equality feminist, Kathy Young did in Time last week. Acknowledging that the anti-feminist rebellion has its eye-rolling moments, she writes, they make a strong argument that a patriarchy that lets women vote, work, attend college, get divorced, run for political office, and own businesses on the same terms as men isn't quite living up to its label. They also raise valid questions about politicizing personal violence along gender lines. Research shows that surprisingly high numbers of men may have been raped, sometimes by women. Really, Kathy? This kind of says it all, doesn't it? So, the best way to find a good feminist is to see who the majority of bad feminists attack. The author of this piece wouldn't attack a fellow feminist advocating the hatred, or even genocide of males, but is more than willing to throw an equality feminist under the proverbial bus. What was that point earlier about feminism being a cult? Next. The notion that feminism invented the patriarchy is risible on its face, in a country where less than 20% of Congress is female, where less than 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs are female, where women make 75 cents on the dollar. Oh no. Here she is writing articles for the New York Observer, yet the poor dear doesn't understand the difference between the words paid and earn. Quick, someone get her a dictionary. Earning less, due to working less hours, is not discrimination, if men and women are being paid the same wage per hour, for the same work. Are we really meant to believe that in this day and age, males are systematically paying females less, simply for being female, across the entirety of the Western world, despite the fact that doing so has been illegal for 50 years now? Why, it almost sounds like some vast delusional conspiracy theory, doesn't it? If male employers could pay half the population less, for exactly the same work, then why not hire exclusively that half of the population? Unless of course every male in a position of power is naturally misogynistic? Yeah, I cannot honestly think why anyone would think feminism is a cult. Next. If Women Against Feminism is not actually a men's rights sock puppet, then it's a vessel for male anger, channeled through young women. Young white men, and the women on Women Against Feminism are, as far as I could tell, 100% blanco, are paying a huge price for the collapsing economy, and as women graduate from college in greater numbers, and jobs for men with only high school degrees diminish, the feminists get the blame. Oh, okay. It's all those hate-filled white men's. It has nothing to do with all the hate-filled feminists. Got it. Next. For most young women, feminism is less of a bad noia than an anyway. As Lana Del Rey said to Fader recently, whenever people bring up feminism, I'm like, God, I'm just not really that interested. But it remains low-hanging fruit for right-wingers. Sociologist Stephanie Coots wrote in the New York Times this weekend that while the sexes have become more equal, American society as a whole has become far less, producing especially deep losses for young men. In 1969, she wrote, 3/4 of 25-year-old men were earning wages that could support a family of 4. 10 years ago, it took until age 30 for the same percentage of men to reach that income level. In 1969, only 10% of men ages 30 to 35 were still low earners. By 2004, almost a quarter of men in that age range remain low earners. I'd lay odds that the young Women Against Feminism anti-feminists are the girlfriends and wives of these frustrated young men. Seeking an easy, liberal target, they pin blame for a gigantic, systemic problem on the women who support and fight for growing gender equality. They fail to understand or choose to ignore the stinking fact that it's rich, powerful, greedy white guys in an era of wealth inequality who've gamed out the dysfunctional economy for their own benefit and rendered their men underemployed, bitter, and yes, bitching husbands and boyfriends. Oh, hold on. Now she's claiming that it's frustrated young men, with employment issues, who are behind it. I thought she said earlier, that it was, white, pedophilic, right-wing, elderly men's rights activists. Of course she ignores the proverbial elephant in the room, you know, the novel concept that it might actually be feminism to blame, for those who are anti-feminist. Strange she never considered that possibility. Next.
Just a quick question to MRAs. What do you think is worse? Being raped or being falsely accused of rape? Because I'm not sure. Because I'm getting mixed messages by you people.
Well, to put it simply, it's not really a matter of which one is worse. This isn't a fucking competition, it's a matter of justice. Rapists destroy people's lives, and deserve to be locked behind bars for a very long time, but false rape accusers can also destroy someone's life, and should also be held accountable for their actions. A false rape claim can lead to someone's life being destroyed, as even if they are proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to be innocent, there will still be some individuals who will consider them guilty. Potentially a false accusation can be worse than rape, as some people have been driven to suicide, others have been killed, and those who are sent to jail face becoming rape victims themselves, repeatedly. So yes, I would consider death, or being raped repeatedly over a number of years worse than a one-off rape. But why do we have to compare pain and suffering? Why can't we just be against both? Being against those who make false claims doesn't make you pro-rape, and only an absolute moron would think so. It really is very simple. If you break the law, and do harm to another, then, once it's proven in a court of law, after a fair and just trial, you should be punished. This simple principle should apply to both rapists and false rape accusers. I don't see why it needs to be any more complex than that. Yet, feminists seem to spend so much time defending false accusers, that they actually harm the credibility of actual victims. It's feminism which is the problem here.
If it's not true, we need to know now, and we need to stop the progression of this whole thing from getting worse, because it's just going to get bigger and bigger.
And only on 7 News, this police interview with a Fort Collins woman. She was later convicted for making phony rape accusations, and the man she accused was arrested and put in jail 1 year ago today. Well, tonight, he is speaking to 7 News reporter Lindsay Watts about why he is still struggling to pick up the pieces.
It's definitely a reminder of what I've been through.
Accused of rape, cuffed at the police station the day before Thanksgiving.
I'd ask you some questions regarding the crime of sexual assault.
Watching it back 1 year later, Dustin Toth says his life still feels out of control. His accuser, Catherine Bennett, a co-worker he'd started dating.
And right now, the statements that I've been given do not match evidence.
This is exclusive video of her police interview. As Toth sat in jail, her story fell apart.
I'm not telling you to drop charges. I want to know the facts about what happened.
Bennett later convicted of making it all up. She was sentenced to 35 days in jail, then an ankle monitor and probation.
I don't feel that's justice.
Toth says he's the one who's been punished. The Army National Guardsman lost his civilian job and was out of work for nearly 6 months after the arrest.
I've been behind on my car payment ever since.
He has his friends, but the emotional pain is still there.
I feel like I'm incapable to actually trust a woman again.
He says it's telling his story that's helping him heal.
Giving me the opportunity to share it gives me the opportunity to clear my name, because I still feel like my name is not cleared.
Lindsay Watts, 7.
Next.
Hi there. So, yesterday I decided to read Happy Tabby's blog, read through it. It was a bad decision. Anyway, it has a blog post called Why I Don't Do Bar Girls, and it's the one I want to reference here. First of all, Why I Don't Do Bar Girls. I fucking hate that title. First of all, I hate when people say, you know, instead of saying have sex with, they say do. Do. Do you. I don't know, I just don't like that. And bar girls, that just sounds stupid, but...
I really hope she has something more solid than just his use of grammar.
Whatever. Please, by the way, don't fuck girls. Don't have sex with girls. Have sex with women. Please. Or men. Just have sex with someone of consent. I mean, age of consent.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that by girls, he means adult women. I somehow don't think he's referring to 6-year-olds at a bar. This is no different than when adult males are referred to as boys. I hope she has something more interesting than this.
Anyway, he's written 4 reasons why not to. By the way, there's a lot of bullshit in this. I won't address all of it because I don't wanna. You can read it yourself in facepalm. I'm gonna quote the 4th reason. Quote, rape accusations are far too common when the girl sobers up and regrets what happened. End quote. So basically, the reason he thinks having sex with, you know, drunk women you don't know is not because that is, you know, taking advantage of them and raping them.
Okay, so if a woman is drunk, and you have sex with her, it's automatically rape. Got it. even if the male is drunker, and the woman enthusiastically initiates it. Remember, we are not talking about a woman who is passed out, just someone who is drunk. And this standard only ever applies to females, and never to males. Which would suggest that females have less agency, as any amount of intoxication makes consent impossible, yet if a male is so drunk that he can hardly walk, he still, somehow, has agency. Strange, it almost sounds like a double standard. Next.
It's not that. It's that they will accuse you of rape falsely, because that's not rape.
No, it's not. If someone willingly consents to sex, and then regrets it the next day, that is not rape. If it were, then the vast majority of males, who have woken with a hangover in a stranger's bed, and suddenly find themselves shocked by who they are laying next to, their vision no longer distorted by beer goggles, would in fact, be rape victims. But I'm guessing she has never considered that. Alcohol reduces inhibitions. Many people get drunk to reduce their inhibitions. Many people also regret doing stupid things the next day, due to this. If you are not willing to take responsibility for your actions while drunk, then don't fucking drink, or at least, don't drink as much. It's pretty clear from what she has told us, that Happy Cabby is not talking about a woman who has passed out, and been dragged back to someone's bed by her hair, but instead someone who has let down their inhibitions, and slept with someone they normally wouldn't have, if sober. Men and women do it all the time, it's called Friday night in most places. Next.
You know, so me as a rape apologist, fucking douchebag, piece of shit, who only, they give a shit about themselves. I don't want to be accused of rape. It's not what the fuck you want to be accused of rape. It's about not fucking raping people.
And having consensual sex with a woman who has been drinking, is not rape. This feminist has effectively taken away women's agency and responsibility. Next.
I am sick of these this is a bit unrelated. Just want to say, I'm sick of people who think that, rape accusations are worse than rape. Or they don't outright say it's worse than rape, but they focus more on that. They don't think, rape is that big of an issue we should focus on. But rape accusations, they're the bad part.
Well, I would argue that if you think rape is bad, then you should also be concerned about those making false allegations, as they destroy the credibility of real victims. Like I said before, both rape and false rape allegations are harmful, and both should be punished. I don't see why that's so hard to understand. Next.
They're the really awful part. Fuck you, Happy Cabby. Fuck all of you who think, you don't want to fuck drunk girls, or girls, I should say women. Fuck drunk women, because you don't want to be accused of rape, and instead of, you don't want to fucking rape someone, because that is rape.
Yep. You heard it. Having sex with a female who is drunk is rape, according to this feminist. It would seem that women have no agency or responsibility, only males. Effectively, this feminist is arguing that adult females are like children. Next.
Fucking asshole. Hey, quick question. If this Mr. Epstein guy apparently is so much for true equality, and he doesn't like feminism because, feminism only focuses on one gender, and isn't for true equality, why doesn't he make any fucking videos against MRAs?
If he ever does, he'd better have his facts straight. Just saying.
Like why? If you are for this true equality, why wouldn't you make videos against MRAs? Because if you want to know people that only focus on one gender, look no further than MRAs.
I don't have an issue with there being a group that focuses solely on female issues. The problem is that feminists tell us that the men's rights movement isn't needed, because feminism is also concerned with men's issues, and then they turn around and tell us that men's issues aren't important. I'm sorry, but you can't have it both ways. Next.
I don't think he's made a single video about them, because I'm on his channel right now and typing into the search bar MRA. Nothing. MRAs. Nothing. MRM. Nothing. You know what I'm saying, right?
Well, clearly this is a crime against humanity. Why isn't the UN doing something about this? Next. Okay. I guess it's time to finally finish off the 8 biggest lies men's rights activists spread about women. I covered the first 7 in this list, in episodes 14 and 15 in this series, so if you haven't seen them already, click the links below. Anyway, number 8 is 8. Feminists want to turn everything into rape. Also inherent to the fear of false rape allegations is the idea that new conceptions of rape are terribly murky and complicated, resulting in the criminalization of hookup culture and supposedly well-intentioned guys getting accused of violating willing, drunk, women. You mean, like this?
Girls, I should say women. Fuck drunk women, because you don't want to be accused of rape, and instead of, you don't want to fucking rape someone, because that is rape.
I think Christina Hoff Sommers sums this whole thing up nicely in her video on rape statistics. Take it away, based mom.
Now, 61.5% of the women the CDC projected as rape victims in 2010 experienced what the CDC called, quote, alcohol and drug facilitated penetration. Now, what does that mean? I mean, if a woman was unconscious or incapacitated, then every civilized person would call it rape. But what about sex while inebriated? I mean, few people would say that intoxicated sex alone constitutes rape. Indeed, a non-trivial percentage of all customary sexual intimacy, including marital sex, probably falls under that definition.
I think it's pretty safe to say that the vast majority of you watching this have either had sex while drunk, or had sex with someone who is drunk. Well, apparently, you are all rapists and rape victims. Oh, hold on, rape victim is a term only applied to females while drunk, right? Clearly no double standards there. But let's be realistic for a minute. Obviously there is a level of intoxication where consent is no longer possible. I don't think anyone is denying that. But that does not mean that all levels of intoxication make consent impossible. Or that this only applies to females. Doing so robs women of their agency and responsibility, and turns willing, consensual participants into rape victims. For fuck's sake. Let's have a little bit of common sense for a change. Next. But broader recognition of what constitutes rape and sexual assault isn't about shirking of personal responsibility, it's about recognizing, for once, the extent of bodily autonomy. To be clear, rape is usually not violent. The victim usually knows the perpetrator. And absence of a firm no is not the same as a yes. If you don't know the difference, you should not be hooking up with someone in the first place. But what about when the female does give a firm yes, but then changes her mind the next day? For example, from the Athens News. Grand jury says no charges warranted in controversial uptown public sex incident. Neither Ohio University student involved in a public sex act on South Court Street homecoming weekend will face any criminal charges in connection with the incident, which attracted worldwide media attention after images and video of it captured by onlookers were widely shared through social media. The man and woman involved in the incident are 20-year-old Ohio University students. A grand jury asked to consider the case on Monday returned no bills, meaning they found no basis for criminal charges. Athens County Prosecutor Keller Blackburn said the evidence uncovered by an Athens police investigation shows that the woman, who claims to remember nothing of the incident, but who filed a police complaint the next day alleging sexual assault, did give consent for the man to perform oral sex on her. In video of the incident, Blackburn said, the woman had a smile on her face at one time, and grabbed the man's head in her hands at another. When the man asked if he should stop what he was doing, Blackburn said, she said, no, go ahead, continue. This was confirmed by an independent witness who was on the scene, Blackburn said. So let's be clear here, she gave an enthusiastic yes, to the point of pushing his face between her legs. And this was all captured on video. You would have to conclude this isn't rape, right? Well, not everyone would agree. Blackburn acknowledged that there are some people who are insisting that the incident was a sexual assault, and the woman was its victim. But he said he's willing to take their criticism for not treating it as one. Justice isn't always popular, he said. One local group that has spoken out about the incident is Hollaback Appalachian, Ohio, which advocates against what it describes as a pervasive rape culture. A spokesperson for the group said Tuesday that however the prosecutor and a grand jury might describe the October 23 incident, we would still consider this a sexual assault. Sarah Fick of Hollaback said group members are very disappointed in the grand jury's decision to return a no bill. It seems that they're trying to pass this off as a normal part of drunken hookup culture, she said, adding that it's precisely this culture, in Hollaback's view, that is the source of much sexual violence against women. It's unsafe, she said, it's the opposite of empowering for women. It's also against the law. Fick also rejected the notion that the woman's spoken statements and apparent responsiveness mean she was not too drunk to consent. If she was drunk at all, she was too drunk to consent, she said. If she was too drunk to remember anything, she was definitely too drunk to consent. The outcome of the legal investigation, she added, is another example of how the criminal justice system doesn't always work for sexual assault victims. Wow, so, in Sarah Flick's own words, if she was drunk at all, she was too drunk to consent. So are males now required to carry a breathalyzer around with them, and be required to take readings of sexual partners before engaging in sex? You'll note the male's level of intoxication wasn't taken into account. Funny that. Couldn't you argue that as he had been drinking, and therefore incapable of giving consent, that her pushing his face into her groin was in fact sexual assault? Of course not, because in this world of feminist equality, being drunk doesn't rob a male of his agency or responsibility. This is something only applied to females. As for her not remembering the next day, I see two possibilities here. 1. She actually doesn't remember. In which case I have to ask, can we still call it rape? She did after all give enthusiastic consent. There is no doubt about this. How exactly is the guy meant to accurately gauge her level of drunkenness, when drunk himself? If he received consent, and there is no doubt that he did, then how can it still be rape? He even asked her if he should stop, and she told him not to. But then there is option number 2, which I tend to think is the most likely. And that is, when she found out that the incident had been recorded, and uploaded to the net by passers-by, she was publicly embarrassed and decided to avoid taking responsibility for her actions. Next. All of you that have seen part 15 in this series, would know that I cover the false rape case reported by Rolling Stone. Based on the information available, I suspect the person in the story, named Jackie, is possibly suffering from some form of Munchausen syndrome, or some other form of emotional disorder. Of course I have no way of knowing for sure, but her story is so full of holes, that it's clearly lacking any credibility. I suggest you watch part 15 in this series, if you haven't already, for more information. Link below. But of course, this lack of credibility hasn't prevented numerous feminists trying to put as much spin on the case as possible. For example, from Mamma Mia, the Rolling Stone rape story that's being used as a weapon. Women lie about sexual assault all the time. Girls, you don't get to cry rape the next morning just because you regret acting so slutty. False allegations are so much worse than rape itself. These are some of the infuriation sentiments being bandied about by men's rights activists in the fallout from a magazine story in the U.S. that has turned a glaring spotlight on the way that sexual assault is talked about and reported. And of course, she gives no citations. Next. Here's what happened. In November this year, Rolling Stone, a magazine that was established in 1967 and prides itself on its investigative reporting of the music industry and politics, published an article titled "A Rape on Campus." The article included an account from a woman named Jackie, a student from University of Virginia, who told Rolling Stone journalist Sabrina Rubin Erdely that she was gang-raped in 2012 during a party at the Phi Kappa Psi fraternity. Yes, and for a magazine that supposedly prides itself on investigative reporting, it failed to do any investigating in this case. Instead, it took the word of a single source as gospel, and failed to check any of the facts. Something they regretted when the whole case blew up in their faces. Next. Since then, people and groups have come forward to dispute Jackie's account. The fraternity issued a statement via the Washington Post vehemently denying the rape claim and disputing Jackie's facts. Other students have also spoken to the media questioning Jackie's account. Other witnesses said that, while she did seem shaken after the alleged attack, she just wanted to return to her dorm, rather than go immediately to police. This of course is underplayed by the author here. There is in fact no evidence to support Jackie's case, and a great deal of evidence to support it being false. Next. The backlash against Jackie. The Washington Post has now published a series of scathing articles questioning Jackie's version of events and criticizing Rolling Stone for failing to adequately fact-check Jackie's story before publication. In response, Rolling Stone's managing editor Will Dana issued a statement offering an explanation and partial defense for how reporter Erdely went about the story. The statement said that, Jackie neither said nor did anything that made Erdely, or Rolling Stone's editors and fact-checkers, question Jackie's credibility. Rolling Stone also published a statement, which they quickly retracted, distancing themselves from Jackie and saying that their trust in her had been misplaced. The amended version of that statement now states that the mistakes are on Rolling Stone, not on Jackie. Anti-feminists and various men's rights activists have used the Rolling Stone story as an excuse to question the legitimacy of sexual assault statistics in general, claiming that such statistics are inflated and that women routinely invent rape stories to assuage regrets over consensual sex. There are still many unknowns in this case, and it is not helpful to speculate either way on what may or may not have occurred back in 2012. Those are now matters for the police. But there are things that we do know about sexual assault, false reporting and trauma. It's these things that we need to remember when we hear of a story like Jackie. I find it interesting that the author criticizes men's rights activists for speculating on what may or may not have occurred, yet she doesn't criticize Rolling Stone for printing the story in the first place. It would seem that publishing a false story, that is in line with feminist ideology, is perfectly acceptable, but then others questioning that false story is somehow out of line. Amazing. If Rolling Stone had have done their job properly, without buying into feminist rape culture hysteria, then people like myself wouldn't have to point out their bullshit. Let's focus on who fucked up here, instead of shooting the proverbial messengers. Next. Here is what we do know. 1. We know that for as long as the media has been reporting on sexual assault, they have been screwing up the reporting of sexual assault. This dodgy reporting has contributed to the community's muddied understanding of sexual assault and trauma. And by feminists acting as a shield for those making false claims, or constantly exaggerating rape statistics, this issue is made even worse. Next. 2. We know that many members of the community expect victims to look and behave in a certain way after an assault. Many people expect victims to act hysterical, report to the police immediately, display noticeable physical injuries, have a complete memory of the event, have no prior experience of sexual assault, etc., but this is rarely the case. Although some people may think this way, I doubt that many or most do. With the exception of the reporting the rape to police immediately part. I think most people would agree that if you want to put a rapist behind bars, then time is of the priority. Now I can understand that someone who has just been raped might find the idea of going to the cops overwhelming, but delaying it only makes it harder to prosecute the rapist. Of course, feminists create a self-fulfilling prophecy here. They create the straw man of an uncaring society, and then offer low conviction rates as proof, thus creating fear in victims, which potentially prevents them from reporting, or delays their reporting, thus creating low conviction rates. Next. 3. We know that trauma affects memory. As one psychologist once explained it to me, imagine that your brain is like a filing cabinet and each memory is a file neatly placed in chronological order. A traumatic event effectively empties the entire filing cabinet on the floor. Files get jumbled up. Some get lost. Many get placed back in the wrong order. Papers sometimes slip between folders by accident. So when a rape victim's story doesn't add up or if it has holes, this is not necessarily evidence that she is lying. On the contrary, it is often evidence of trauma. Which is exactly why we shouldn't rely on one person's account of a claim. And further evidence is needed. Of course, many feminists want an accuser's word to be enough, without any further evidence. Next. 4. We know that, aside from trauma, there are other reasons rape victims sometimes change their accounts, and that this does not mean that a rape has not taken place. Rape victims are aware of, and highly sensitized to victim blaming and shaming attitudes within the community, and many victims omit or change certain details of a rape to appear more sympathetic. This does not mean that a rape has not occurred, but rather that our community has not, as yet, managed to create an environment where victims feel safe enough to be able to tell their stories honestly and without fear of judgment. This is our failing, not theirs. Which is exactly why we shouldn't rely on one person's account of a claim. And further evidence is needed. Next. 5. We know that false rape allegations are real, but they occur very rarely. For example, while some MRAs claim that as many as 41% of sexual assault reports are falsified, the truer number stands at about 2%. This is the same rate of false reports of all crimes, but it's rare for a false report of another type of crime, such as a mugging, used to then cast doubt on the credibility of all other mugging victims. In other words, human beings sometimes lie about being the victim of a crime, but this is in no way specific to either rape or women. Further, of women who do make false rape complaints, only a fraction of them actually accuse someone specific. This negates the notion that false accusations are driven first and foremost by revenge, as per the common MRA narrative. Okay, so there are 3 claims made here. The first is that only 2% of rapes reported are false allegations. I debunked this thoroughly in my last video. But we'll quickly recap here in case you haven't seen it. The 2 to 8% figure is the number of claims proven false. Logically, not every false claim is going to be proven false, so it's safe to say that the 2 to 8% is an absolute minimum number. Considering that around 6% of rape accusations are proven true in a court of law, that means that potentially 94% of claims could be false. I say potentially, but I personally don't believe the number to be that high. But there is roughly around 86% of rape accusations that are neither proven true or false. Her next claim is that there is false reporting for other crimes, and this doesn't discredit victims of these crimes. But she misses the point here completely. No one is claiming that a mugging victim's word should be taken as gospel, without any other evidence. But that's what feminists want for rape victims. You can't compare muggings and rapes together, if you allow different standards of evidence. Also, I doubt many mugging victims wait a year before reporting the crime. And her third claim is that MRAs claim that false accusations are driven first and foremost by revenge. This is simply not the case. Although there are more than enough examples of revenge, it's hardly the only reason someone does it. As I said before, I think a lot of this comes down to a variation of Munchausen syndrome. Next. 6. We know that males are far more likely to be a victim of sexual assault than be falsely accused of it, and that groups who advocate on behalf of men would be far better off focusing on this issue. This assumes that a. We don't advocate for male victims of sexual assault, or b. We cannot advocate for both of which are false. Next. 7. We know that the overwhelming majority of sexual assaults are never reported to police and that underreporting, not falsified reporting, is a far more prevalent issue for both males and females. Despite this, false reports garner far more media interest and airtime than confirmed reports of rape. I seriously do not think false reports get more attention than confirmed reports. But I'm happy to be proven wrong if someone can show evidence. As for unreported rapes being an issue, I agree, but that doesn't mean false reporting isn't also an issue, or that feminist rape culture hysteria isn't an issue. Both of which make it more difficult for actual victims to come forward, by the way. Next. 8. We know that 1 in 5 women will experience sexual assault and that the most common lie that women tell in relation to sexual assault is not that it happened at all, but that it was probably my own fault. The 1 in 5 statistic has long been debunked, and is the perfect example of feminist rape culture hysteria, creating a climate of fear. Next. 9. We know that college fraternities have a long history of sexual assault complaints against them and that universities have been widely accused of participating in systemic cover-ups of embarrassing episodes. And we also know that due to Title IX, and the preponderance of evidence, that the number of false allegations within universities is greatly increasing, leading to destroyed lives. Next. 10. And finally, we know that now more than ever, we must encourage other women to keep coming forward and telling their stories. Because we cannot afford to be diverted by one case and lose sight of a much, much bigger picture. I agree that victims should come forward. But the legal system requires a standard of evidence. When that standard is taken away or eroded, false claims increase, and people begin to lose confidence in the system. This impacts actual victims. Anyone who actually cares about rape victims should be condemning people like Jackie, but instead feminists are supporting them. To me this is lunacy. Not to mention counterproductive. Next. I find it very interesting the points 3 and 4 in her list, basically, discredit the concept of relying on an accuser's word alone. I always find it funny when feminists are too stupid to realize they have just argued against their own position. Anyway folks, that's it for another episode in this series. Until next time, don't drink the poison Kool-Aid.
So what does it mean to be a men's rights activist?
Well, it simply means that you understand that men have issues, which are generally not acknowledged or understood by most of society, and you actively try to change this.
Men's rights activism is a group of men who believe that men don't have the same rights that women have.
An example of this would be the legal right to bodily integrity.
That is true. There's a bias towards women in court when it comes to stuff like child custody, because traditionally women are of more psychological importance than men when talking about like motherhood and stuff, right?
I personally wouldn't have worded it quite like that. But so far she isn't doing too bad, I guess.
But also, they ignore the part where women have been oppressed for years and years and years.
Oh no. That went downhill really quickly. Please don't mention patriarchy.
And in some places, women can't even get an education because they're seen as lesser.
And in some places young boys are forced to become soldiers. Somehow, I don't think they are getting much of an education either.
Let's not even talk about patriarchy. Honestly, like, it's ridiculous.
I agree, patriarchy theory is ridiculous.
Even in addition to women being seen as lesser than men, white, straight, cis men are men's rights activists. For the most part, they already have so many privileges by being heterosexual, being completely gender not neutral, normal, they don't, they're just men, they're not trans and they're not fluid and, they're white. I don't even need to say anymore. Yeah.
Well, clearly if they are white, they must be the spawn of Satan.
And they're men. They get paid more than women.
And she doesn't understand the difference between the words paid and earned.
And they're just seen as better than women in many societies.